Because originally, it was pride for the Black community to be recognized by the broader culture for a whole month. Is that still needed today? And does this do more harm than good?
Black History Month. So, don't start. Okay. Last year, well, let me give you a little history. So I used to be like so pro Black History Month. I have like danced in church for Black History Month, like helped promote Black History Month at school when I was in university. Like, yes, I love Black History Month. And it's my birthday month, y'all. Yeah, I'm here for it. But here come Kristen. She started asking me some questions and I'm like, oh, wow. Like, how do we, well, one, do you celebrate your Blackness before you celebrate your identity in Christ? That was a question that was really hard for me that just kind of sent me over. But I think in some of our conversations around Black History Month, around cultural identity and the celebration of different cultures and things like that, how do we do that so that we are not participating necessarily in partiality? How do we uphold the beauty of culture and the celebration of culture in a way where, we'll celebrate Black people all month long, but then no other people group ever gets any time, play, celebration, or things like that? So this year at CFBU, we've decided not to necessarily do a big push for Black History Month, not necessarily saying that culture isn't important, but that we are in a process of considering like what is the way that we highlight many different cultures because of the beauty of culture. What does that look like? What is a scriptural precedent for that and things like that? If you remember last year we did every day of February in honor or tribute to a person, an African American. So that is, if you don't see that happening this year, that's why our Martin Luther King blog came out in February, but it was just luck of the draw. Basically, we dropped it on the first Tuesday when, it was scheduled to release. It just happened to be Martin Luther King in Black history. It wasn't intentionally done that way. So I want to talk to you. I want to know, what are your thoughts about Black History Month?
Man, so I kind of got to set the picture. So born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. So if you know anything about the civil rights movement, Dr. King, Birmingham was a major focal point for that. Sit-ins, marches, the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing of the 4 little girls got killed. Birmingham was a hotbed for the civil rights movement, and for good reason. It was really bad there. So I grew up learning about the civil rights movement. Black History Month was a big deal in school and in church. You had a Black History program at school and you had one at church. And so it was a big part of my life just growing up. Today, I don't know. I think because in our current culture, and especially in the last few years with everything going on, we've been so inundated with the Black narrative, the Black struggle, Black history, our history with racism, all of these things, that February came around. It's like, what are we going to talk about now? We've been talking about it, which I think was what people wanted, right? They wanted an integrated history and not necessarily just this one month that we would talk about these types of things. So like a lot of good things in history that was started, my question is it still needed today? That's kind of where I sit. It doesn't really strike anything with me today. And I wonder if it does more harm today than it does good. Because originally, it was, Black people needed, to be affirmed. This history needed to be recognized. People need to learn about it. It was a sense of pride for the Black community to be recognized by the broader culture for a whole month. I just don't know if that is is that still needed today? And does this do more harm than good as far as us moving forward as a nation of people,
I think that's a very good question. Like, what is the motive and what is the end result of it?
Yes.
Like, is it helpful in the broader culture? I think for me, what I tend to think about is it helpful in the church?
Mhm.
Because I always say that culture is going to cult. But when I think about Black history in the church, is this something that we should be celebrating, that we should be kind of, gosh, I feel like in some churches, people are like even siphoned off. So it's like, well, we're going to let all the Black people do this, but then white people, y'all can just, sit on the sidelines and observe.
Mhm.
Um, I think in schools, or like I said, in culture, agreeing with what you said, there was a time when what a fuller narrative of history wasn't observed. I think where we are today is that there is a push for a fuller narrative of history. There is a push for, the truth of America's, unjust racial history to be taught. And that doesn't necessarily make it critical race theory. What people are requesting is just, hey, how do we talk about the issues that were present, from the end of slavery through the 70s, 80s, things that we may still see today. But when we look in the church, do you think that there's a place for it in the church, or like, have we reached a time in the church where it's like, well, we don't need that here? Should we have ever had it here?
That is a good question. I don't think we should have. I look at the things we celebrate in the church as God's people, and I don't know where that necessarily fits in, because we don't do it for any other culture. All right. We don't, I've never celebrated National Hispanic Month in church. For St. Patty's Day, they're not saying, hey, Irish people, wear your kilts to church, right? No,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any other culture that is kind of pointed out, made to be separate and distinct, and kind of pointed out separate from everyone else. And so as far as the church is concerned, I don't know exactly what benefit it serves us as the body to, highlight a particular group of people in the church,
Yeah, I think it reminds me of that Bible verse that, like, from the nations, like, God is making one new man, one new humanity. And so if that's the case, he's taken us from the nations to make one new humanity, I would believe that with that comes a different culture, a culture of the kingdom. So
Yes.
how do we celebrate the culture of the kingdom? And, does that mean that there's no place for, my ethnic or earthly cultural celebrations and things like that? Maybe. I'm struggling to figure out, where does that belong? Where does it belong in relation to observance or celebration and things like that? And I know, I'm not sure if Lisa's still watching. I know she had dinner, but, Lisa does a lot of work with different cultures, and I feel like cultural observances and things like that, from what I've seen on her page. So if you have any thoughts, Lisa, please jump in and let us know. Because to me, it would be super helpful to understand, like, how do we thread through, I have a rich history and a rich culture. It may not be that I celebrate this on a Sunday morning, in church, because I want to uphold the culture of the kingdom. Maybe it's a potluck where everybody comes in their, ethnic garb, or brings a meal from, their culture or something like that. And then everybody can sit down and participate. I'm not sure.